Hello and welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Bryan Christopher, being joined today by Jonathan James and Derek Anderson. And as we fly into 2025, by the time you hear this, we're probably going to be well into March, maybe April. We kind of want to pump the brakes a little bit. Like I feel like we're getting too far into 2025, so we're actually going to reach back into 2024 to go over some of the big movies that we covered from last year that we feel like maybe we didn't get enough chance to get into some of the more spoilery and thematic discussions. So we've got kind of the four big ones from last year. We're going to do Heretic. You are going to hear me, Jonathan, and Derek probably laugh every time we say heretic because there is an urge to say heretic, like someone who shall remain nameless said last time we were talking about the movie. But we will be covering Heretic, Nosferatu, The Substance, and Longlegs. And yes, these are ones we've done before, but like I said, we really want to get into more of a spoilery discussion on these. And I do think Nosferatu is new for the podcast, so there'll be a little bit of old stuff, a little bit of new stuff, but I think we're going to get into some topics that we didn't get to the first time around. So I'm excited. How about you fellas? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm excited to jump into everything. It's tough because we don't want to talk about spoilers because we know a lot of our listeners haven't had a chance to see it. Either we have international listeners or people who didn't catch it in theaters and want to see it on VOD. It's always a balance. So I think it's a great idea to do these spoiler episodes. And whole episode is going to be us just spoiling it for you. So hopefully you didn't see it. Hopefully
Yeah,
you heed the warning.
blanket spoiler alert. And we all know that, even under the best circumstances, Derek can sometimes go into spoiler territory. So we're saying it now because it's probably going to happen pretty quickly.
That's why I'm super excited because I don't have to worry about that this time. I can just go in and not have any worries about
Yeah, you're
ruining the movie for
unfiltered,
anybody.
unedited.
Yeah,
Derek is off the leash, ladies and gentlemen. Watch out. So we're going to
extended
kick
cut.
things. We're going to kick things off with actually what I think is my favorite horror movie of 2024, and that's going to be Heretic, directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, written by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, and starring Hugh Grant, as well as Sophie Thatcher, Chloe East, and Topher Grace. So we're not going to get into necessarily summaries while we do this. Like again, we've covered these movies before. At this point, they're old enough you probably know what they're about. So we're just going to kind of get into a little bit more in-depth conversation. So yeah, Heretic, I hinted at a lot of Heretic in terms of the things that I like, but I couldn't really talk about it because so much of what I really pulled from Heretic was based off of spoilers and where things wound up. And I think what I really loved about where they go with that movie is that it is presenting religion and control in this very kind of like nuanced way without just kind of falling back on that lazy, like both sides argument. And they take this very charming performance, at least initially charming performance by Hugh Grant, and they know, what they're doing when they cast him because he's got that stammer, that aw shucks attitude.
Without him,
And
this does not work. He
no,
commands the
yeah.
attention,
Mhm.
especially in the beginning for that whatever 20 minutes that they're going back and forth. Like there are very few actors that can hold your attention like that.
Yeah, and it's, like if you've seen the previews for this movie, going into it that he's bringing something sinister to it. But because it's Hugh Grant, like I think there's a level to which starting off you're kind of willing to give the benefit of the doubt. And they also are smart enough to put things in place where, these two missionaries who you see as being very kind of naive at first, they also immediately start making smart decisions. They're just trapped in a bad situation because he's got this very kind of fortified house where the cell phones don't work, the doors automatically lock. So there's only a short period of time where they're kind of playing with that idea of like, how far does politeness go? They're there, they can start to sense some things are wrong. They aren't sure, so that they don't want to be impolite, but it's very quick that they kind of get over that hump. But by that point, it's already too late.
It's one of those things where humans maybe in a situation where it's like this person might be a serial killer, but we're polite, and then people end up getting killed. My wife watches a lot of true crime while she works, and so I see a lot of that. I'm like, but like all the warning signs are there. Maybe you could have just gone. As soon as they go through the door here, they have no chance, of course. They don't realize that they're locked in immediately. But moving forward, I'm going to start. If I think you're a serial killer, I'm just going to run away, not even going to go inside because I don't know what kind of house you have. I'm just running the other way.
Wait, you talk about like as if this has already happened before, like you've had a few close calls with serial killers that you
I haven't
narrowly
had,
escaped.
that's funny because I haven't had serial killer close calls, but in my life, I have had some bad situations that I got into, and I had a bad feeling about it in some of those cases. And I thought maybe there wasn't an option for me. And maybe I could have just literally just ran the other way. But I was like, well, nothing bad's going to happen to here. You stay on the side of things are going to be fine. That's not always the right move.
And it's interesting because like Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, their characters as the sisters from the Mormon faith, like they keep mentioning that to Hugh Grant, where they're like, well, we're not technically supposed to be alone in a room with
Yeah.
an adult male, and he kind of keeps pushing and pushing and trying to get them to bend the rules a little bit, and it's like this. Like they even say like we shouldn't be doing this, and yet he's so charming, or he says, "Well, my wife's in the other room. She's baking this blueberry pie." And then that turns out to be this candle that's on the coffee
I knew
table,
that
which
candle from the beginning. I'm like, "Ugh."
that's a very specific flavor to or scent.
Yeah.
The blue, not just blueberry, but blueberry pie. But
I
it
do
is interesting.
I do like to think, and I'm saying this like with that very authoritative, I got my finger in the air. I know nobody can see this, but as a scented candle connoisseur, I would like to think I would know the difference between a scented candle and an actual blueberry pie baking. However, the way the route this movie is trying to go, I think it's doing a really good job at showing for Hugh Grant's character, this is all about control. And this is him showing the ways in which religion is used to control people, and he plays kind of both, like he kind of hops the fence between explaining the ways in which religion is bullshit and the way it's used to control people, and then he tries to offer this potential, like, well, I've got the one true religion, when by the end of it you realize that he is literally, it's all a big con that he uses to get women literally into cages, like in these like sub basements of his house. And there is a really interesting gender dynamic conversation happening, which I believe one of our writers wrote about recently, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, yeah. We have a new writer on the team, Vinny C, and they wrote it's the flesh and fear of Heretic from a feminist perspective. And it's 3,000 words that dives into this. I highly recommend checking it out. I don't want to paraphrase any of it. But Vinny had really spent a lot of time with this film, had a lot of great thoughts, and it's worth the read for people that are looking for more on it.
Because yeah, I think there's something to be said about the way, be it through religion or through, twisted logic. Unfortunately, the patriarchy is such that men try and find as many ways as possible that they can to control women, and that is on full display here. And I think it's a movie that works because it explores those themes in such a deft way, but also because it is just a tense fucking movie. It is like the entire time, like my as the movie starts, like my shoulders kind of start tensing up, and by the end of it, like they haven't let go for like an hour and a half. By the time the credits rolled, it just like I could breathe again at that point. It's really effective in the way it builds tension, and kind of like it's just this pretty gnarly roller coaster ride with some really interesting discussions about religion and control.
And I love the amount of discussions I've seen back and forth about the movie. This is a film that probably one of the most polarizing I've seen amongst critics and at least some of the horror fans I've seen talk about it. In that, everybody agrees that the performances are good. It's a very, well-made movie, but then there's been a lot of discussions about the message of this film. There's been some people who we'll say the twist of the end, kind of the fact that it's not supernatural through people, and some people were like, "Hey, I would have liked a supernatural." ending for this or supernatural answer. I think this is very effective as is. And there are also some people that were talking about, hey, maybe how could he realistically hold this many people? How could the house realistically be set up this way? I guess my argument to that is similar to where the Twilight Zone will just place you in something that's not Earth, but is sort of like Earth. There are certain things that kind of signal that, hey, this might not be exactly, Earth, right? Or at least the Earth that we know, in the sense that, I don't mean sci-fi. I just mean like they want to tell a story about a house that keeps people in. They have him build this house that probably couldn't exist without people knowing in real life. They don't care about explaining that piece of it. What they really want to do is tell a story about control and religion and how that's used against people.
To that point, in terms of like there being that discussion at the end of how people interpret it, Derek, I'm interested to know, it ends with there is a callback to, when the sisters are talking, one of them mentions about how they like to imagine when they die, they will come back as a butterfly and kind of show that their loved ones that, hey, I'm still here, I'm still watching over you. And when, our survivor gets out and she's kind of badly wounded. She's in the woods, surrounded by snow. You're kind of wondering, like, is she going to be able to get out of there alive? She sees a butterfly land on her hand, but then when she kind of like looks back, just very quickly, it disappears. What do you like, Derek? Where do you land on something like that? Did you see it as there was a supernatural element? Did you see it as kind of like her hallucinating? What's your take on that?
I I feel like it at the end of the day, because it kind of shows both sides of the same coin. Like, well, it's there, but then it's not the butterfly. And I think it's showing to me that like Sister Paxton, maybe to her, that's what the afterlife is because that's what she that's what her innate belief is. So that in this moment where she is kind of on death's doorstep, that's what she is seeing because she has those thoughts kind of already, or that faith that she has held on to. But that could also look differently to somebody else too in that same situation. Like they might see nothing, or they might see a caterpillar, or a cat or something. I feel like it shows that you at the end of the day, I feel like it does take a stance that it is a little ambiguous, but at the end of the day, it was what she believed in. That's what she saw. But the fact that it vanishes, though, is them, I think, also saying, well, this could also be nothing too. Like I feel like it does kind of toe that line a little bit. But I like that in that case because it's kind of appreciating Paxton's belief while also saying, well, this could all just be, kind of like what Hugh Grant's character was just coming up with stuff that, just benefited him and wasn't there in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it leaves it open to interpretation without taking the chicken's way out. Like I feel like they're taking a stance on this stuff, but they are also leaving the room for interpretation.
Which I appreciate because it's not going all in one way or the other, but it's also not completely, saying, well, it could, it's not completely on the fence either.
All right. Well, I think let's move on to our next movie. We are going to do Robert Eggers' 2024 adaptation of Nosferatu, based off of Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, written by Henrik Galeen, and directed by F.W. Murnau. I know we said, we've covered these, so we don't really have to do a synopsis. We haven't covered Nosferatu yet. Fortunately, the synopsis is just Dracula with different names. This is classically a movie it is just an
Sacrilege.
adaptation of yes, just an adaptation of Dracula that they tried to avoid getting their asses sued by
Oh, and
changing
they
the
did
names.
get sued.
Yeah, they failed. They failed because this is Dracula,
This movie
just
almost
with
didn't
different names.
survive. The fact that we even have it now is a bit of there's a story behind that, but basically only a couple of copies survived. So
Mhm.
we almost didn't have this at all.
And I really like what Robert Eggers has done here by being very faithful to the original movie, but just fleshing out certain parts of it to make it more robust. Now, Derek, you are the one to see it most recently, i.e., within the last few minutes before recording. So, with it being
I'm going to jump
freshest
in
in
for
your
one
brain,
second, sorry, because I do want to say that like this is a common Derek move, is that we'll have an episode scheduled, days in advance, a week in advance, sometimes weeks in advance, and then we have a scheduled time, calling you out for this, Derek, in public, and then Derek will show up 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes later, and it's not just because he's late, it's usually because he's getting back from the theater after having seen the movie, or in this case, he was just watching it at home. So
yeah,
as
this
soon
time
as,
he was only a minute late this time because he didn't
yeah,
have to worry about the commute.
yeah, but as soon as Brian and I got on the line, we're like, Derek's not going to be here. I'm like, he's watching the movie right now. He's watching something, one of these movies he didn't see.
Well, in my defense, the extended version of Nosferatu recently came out on Peacock, so
With four whole extra minutes.
I
Well,
thought,
I
why
mean,
not
he didn't
watch
know
it
he was doing the
then?
extended cut. If he
Yeah.
had, he if it was the regular cut, he would have been here 3 minutes early instead of 1 minute late.
And yep, exactly. So that really did make a difference this time around. And I like for something to be fresh coming into the episode, I think procrastination can be effective when it's maybe a little more timely, but
I mean, I'm okay with it because I haven't seen it since November. So yeah, I mean, I barely remember it.
and you saw it early because the public didn't get to see it until Christmas Day, but
Oh, that wasn't
you
even a humble brag. That was just a fact. But yes, I did see it early.
I'm thinking it didn't come out on Thanksgiving though. But no, it did not disappoint. I was really enthralled by this movie and you're thinking Robert Eggers, you're thinking Nosferatu, one of the classics, of course, a classic based on a classic in its own right. And really the last time I saw like the original Nosferatu is when all three of us were at Overlook Film Festival a few years ago and we saw this remixed version of it
Yeah,
that
no, it was
the
Nosferatu, remember?
Yeah,
The number
it was
two.
like tripping without tripping. And to explain, I guess there's a lot of people that don't know about these types of movies, but basically folks will like remix it so it's both visually, it's both the visuals and audio. So it's like yeah, it's like an acid trip. But it was Nosferatu, and we got through all of it. We got through what do you call it? Orlok carrying his coffin, which didn't make it into the new one, weird enough. I was expecting to see him carry his coffin around town, but he didn't.
and he wasn't being chased by mobs of groupies while Hard Day's
Yeah.
Night played.
Yeah, but that was the
Yeah,
last time we saw it.
I feel like saying that the last time you saw Nosferatu was at Overlook during that screening is like saying the last time you saw like a 70s martial arts movie was seeing Kung Pao enter the fist.
Yes.
Like they are very different movies by that point.
Both still effective, but one more a parody than the action. Yeah, but still fun, still fun. So this was really really well done though. Obviously, I think a lot of people feel the same way just based on the reaction to when this came out around Christmas time, and it is also technically a Christmas movie based on the timeline of the events of the film. We even get a Christmas tree with the candles
Oh
on
yeah,
it.
it's a Christmas movie.
It's so I'm really happy we can put this like in between Die Hard and Christmas Vacation for Christmas viewing. But this was really well done. I think the thing that I liked the most about it was the production design. By Fred Lathrop did the production design for this movie, and we had shared a behind the scenes clip on Daily Dead about the making of the film, and they actually like built the entire German village that a lot of the movie takes place in, and now, especially nowadays, where like even for scenes that you think they would just film on a city street, so much is done with like visual effects, where even the backdrop of like just regular buildings, they'll just put that in post. But like the fact that they actually built an entire village for them to do all these scenes in, I thought really immersed you in what was going on. And yeah, it was good. I love the casting of it, particularly Willem Dafoe, who's one of my favorites as not the Van Helsing, but the Van Helsing knockoff, I guess you could say.
Von
with
Franz,
his
I think it is.
Von
Yeah.
Franz.
I will say, just to jump in, and I'm going to jump more on this because that's what I'm going to do. But
Hey, you said we could do spoilers, so
no, it has nothing. You can spoil as much as you want. I'm just saying, like, I'm going to jump in on the conversation because otherwise, it's going to be like I say something for 10 minutes and then you say something for 10 minutes, and I think about what you're talking about. I'm like, oh, I got something to say, and then by the time 10 minutes pass, I forgot about it. So.
Derek, he
Um,
just likes cutting you off more than he likes cutting me off.
That's true too. But I felt I love this movie. There's not a but there, but I felt this movie was
You
running
just said
with
but.
I did, but I felt this movie was running with a little less energy until Willem Dafoe shows up. Once
Mm.
Willem Dafoe shows up, this film gets energized. And I enjoyed the movie all the way through. It felt like a stage play, but Willem Dafoe just brings something special, which is why Robert Eggers uses him. And once he jumps in, the movie kind of picks up in pace. He has more energy, I get more energy, and he's able to kind of carry us through this movie. Which, like I said, it is a bit slower.
I do gotta say though, like Lily Rose Depp, like she was fighting an uphill battle with me just because like my mind's going to Nepo baby, especially given who her dad is. Like Johnny Depp kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I she is asked to do some really wild stuff in this movie and do it in a way that comes off as grounded. And I think she pulls it off with flying colors. She
Yeah,
does a
like
really good job.
possession style. No, she
Yeah.
she does
Mhm.
an excellent job. There's all these memes all over the place now. So every time she's like when she's getting possessed, it's all over the
Yeah.
place. I've seen it to Nicki Minaj and every other song now. So like that's something. But no, she really does a wonderful job. And if Willem Dafoe like kind of energizes this, but I think Lily Rose Depp's the one that really sells this as like as a horror classic. Because even at the start, right, we don't know exactly how this is going to differ from your traditional Dracula or from the Herzog Nosferatu, and her performance is really what sets it apart. And also, of course, the finale and the way she takes out Orlok, which is probably an all-time great scene. From
Mm.
just the scene itself to the practical effects to that like final kind of shot of her and Orlok dead. It's yeah, it's incredible, and she does an incredible job.
It's also such a phenomenal way that Eggers has taken, again, like the broad strokes, like the main narrative points are all the same as they are from Nosferatu. But the way he makes it more robust is really looking at um, uh, Ellen's relationship with Nosferatu as this discussion about like the view of women's sexuality as this big destructive force at the time. It's this darkness that follows her, and it's always kind of like just kind of bubbling under the surface that it is sexual in nature. And to kind of watch that like release at the end where they do come together in perhaps figurative, perhaps literal, like sexual congress, and in something that is very like straightforward and almost like kind of like fairy tale in the original Nosferatu, where she sacrifices herself by letting herself get fed on until the sun comes up. They kind of like have a meta discussion about that in this movie, where it is like a fairy tale where it's up to the damsel to be the one to bring down the kind of the evil, and kind of looking at that evil as like that very kind of rigid and Victorian slash Puritan way of looking at women's sexuality, and the way it's seen as like a literal plague. It brings with it like rats and death and destruction, and the fact that by the end of it, it takes Ellen's life, for quote unquote the good of kind of her male counterparts, is just such a tragic and beautifully written finale to like a very basic ending in the original Nosferatu.
They definitely change, I think, what Eggers really does here that kind of sets it apart from recent vampire movies. Well, and no, and decades of vampire movies, forgive me, is that vampires are always seen as something you want to be or you want to spend time with for the most part, right? Um, and very sensual or sexual beings. And so, I mean, you can even think of Bram Stoker's Dracula and Gary Oldman, or like even to Bela Lugosi. But in this case, like you don't want, Orlok in your life. This is a creature to be feared. This is a creature that preys upon people, and so it's kind of treating him as like an abusive boyfriend. I think it was kind of the right move to make this a character that we fear instead of making this well, the traditional love story we usually see, because we've seen it time and time again. We've seen a ton of different adaptations of Dracula, and very rarely the vampire as like we'll say like monstrous as this one.
Although he does have that mustache, though.
Let's talk about the mustache. Some people did not like the mustache. I loved it.
I don't get it. I thought it was fitting for like this
Hmm.
Eastern European kind of like baron. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
but yeah, some people have said that it was like it made them laugh in a non-intentional way.
When I saw it, I knew as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, people are gonna laugh at this. But I think it was the right move. I mean, if you remove it, I don't think it works as much. It kind of feels like it is this like person now creature that's just been forced to keep going. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's a monster, but that mustache, at least for me, like kind of humanizes Orlok to a degree. So it's
Yeah, it is. It's kind of the most human part left of him. He's kind of
yeah.
become so distorted, like he would almost be like unrecognizable as a person without that facial hair.
Yeah.
It's the most that a mustache has been talked about, I think, on films since Henry Cavill had his CGI mustache, or like removed
Henry
through
Cavill.
CGI with Mission Impossible.
How do
Cavill,
you do it,
Cavill,
man? How do
Cavill.
you do it?
I mean, it's been a few years since we've talked about Batman versus or Batman. Was it
Justice
Batman
League.
versus Yeah,
It was
Justice
Justice
League.
League.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not like
So
Henry Cavill's like gone off the radar since then. They literally in Deadpool and Wolverine they call him the Cavalrine. Like
I don't know. I feel like Cavill just sounds like even cooler. So I'm trying to get it to stick, but it's probably not going to take off.
Yeah, but I can't remember these things because then I'm gonna have an interview and I'm gonna be like, Cavill.
Right, and then you'll be cursing me silently.
Yeah, it happens.
oh, it won't be silent.
Oh yeah.
Oh, but yes, and Bill Skarsgård, shout out to his performance as well because I think I don't know if it's quietly been doing this because these are huge movies, but he's done such a great job. I mean, from Pennywise to now Nosferatu, and then all the way going back to like Hemlock Grove and stuff. He's just played so many different types of characters, but particularly under the makeup now, like he's really building quite the resume of like characters that you can't recognize him as.
We're in a safe space, guys, right? Nobody else is gonna hear this, just the three of us.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, just because between the three of us. When I was watching Nosferatu for the first time, I couldn't, the only time, because I didn't see a second time, as soon as I heard him start talking, could not get Nandor the Relentless out of my head. And so, as much as I loved, he did a great job with the accent. It was probably spot on. It was probably like exactly how that character should have sounded. But I've also seen a lot of What We Do in the Shadows. I leave it on repeat, and he sounds just like Nandor the Relentless. And so I just like I movie's great. I've no the movie I've said it's a masterpiece. It's a classic. I agree with this. It's not their fault that they went with this voice. Maybe they didn't think Nandor, but I immediately thought Nandor. I have to, as soon as I hear it, I have to be like, it's not Nandor the Relentless.
You kept
This is
waiting for
this is
Bill
serious.
Skarsgård. You kept
Yeah,
waiting for Bill Skarsgård to like. Now I have to go and attend my superb owl party.
exactly. So yes, it's very close to Nandor to the point that it threw me off. Not enough that I didn't enjoy the movie, but especially in that for maybe that's why I needed Willem Dafoe to show up.
That is amazing. But now
Yeah.
I can't, now I won't be able to unhear that. So thank you
Yep.
for that.
People will say
All
the
right.
same soon. It's I don't know how you say his name. Ralph Ensign is the doctor. He's going to be
Mhm.
Galactus. So
Oh, wow.
people look
Hmm.
back at this, they'll be like, "Oh, Galactus is in the movie."
And then he was also in The Witch or the Vivitch.
Yes.
So it's interesting that it's cool that Eggers brought him back for this movie too. And of course, Willem Dafoe, having been in The Lighthouse, he's and then Bill's brother Alexander Skarsgård in The Northman. So
He
there's
likes
kind of
working
an
with a lot of the
Eggers
same
verse
people.
going
Yeah.
on. Yeah, it's cool.
All right. Before I get it fully embedded in my head that Nosferatu is Nandor the Relentless, let's move on to our next movie. I think it's already taken root. We might be too late, but I'm going to try anyway. So why don't we talk Jonathan's favorite movie from 2024, The Substance?
Mhm.
And Jonathan, why don't you kick us off with kind of your spoilery thoughts?
Yeah, it probably will be a stream of consciousness. I mean, the Substance is a movie that, it's a movie that probably wouldn't exist under, I always say movies are alchemy. And under different circumstances, maybe this movie wouldn't exist or wouldn't see the light of day. This was over at Universal and they weren't going to release it, and movie ended up picking it up. And this was able to find an audience pretty easily with horror fans, right? But the fact that now this is nominated for Academy Awards, it's pretty cool that this is a movie. Coralie Fargeat loves horror movies. And so, there are people that are like, oh, it's too close to this or it's too close to that. I see a lot of, this movie wears a lot of influences on its sleeve, but I don't think it's taking anything directly. And then I would also argue, like, how many times do we give Tarantino a pass when he has, Bruce Lee outfits or when he has scenes straight from other movies in his? And here, what I see is someone who had a story, a clear direction, a clear vision, and then also used excellent, points of reference, whether it's The Shining, whether it's The
Okay,
Fly.
I do want to that was intentional, right? Like that hallway and the
Yes,
bathroom is supposed
exactly.
to look like
Yeah.
the overlook, right? Okay, good.
Yeah. And there's actually, they released online Corley's lookbook, and it was a visual lookbook, and literally this just hit the internet within the last week. I wish I could credit somebody, but everybody was posting. It was a Google Drive link, and it had the lookbook. And usually, like when you present it, you might have like a lot of text or share like snippets from the script, or it might be video. In this case, it was a photo lookbook to go for like the look and feel. And you can tell again that she's someone that loves horror movies. So I suggest kind of looking out for that. But yeah, like this has a little bit of everything, but it's entirely its own thing. And to use, horror and sci-fi because it can be both. A lot of people say it has to be one or the other. This is also sci-fi. It's clearly like there is a scientific process for kind of creating this split. And I think it's really cool that she uses this story in the way the best storytellers do to tell something which is important today. And I always kind of go back to like Rod Serling and the Twilight Zone. And the Twilight Zone, some of the best stories ever, and they were able to take a sci-fi story, put something in the future, put something in space, put people together, something that was slightly otherworldly, but make it about important topics today. And I think that she was really able to do that. So yeah, it's awesome. And I didn't spoil anything too, and I could have, but I didn't.
I am I am so glad to see Coralie getting opportunities like this and also taking it and running with it because anybody who's seen Revenge knows that she is really good at crafting a story that is somehow both stylish but also brutalist and like unflinching. Revenge is I think probably the rape revenge movie to end all rape revenge movies. Like it takes out that whole male gaze element of it, all the titillation of sexual assault scenes that you see like in older rape revenge movies, and it's just like, no, this is a horrible event, and then kind of turns it into like this like surreal Rambo movie. And I think she does something, she takes that and dials it up to 11 in the substance where it is extremely stylish, but it's also in the form of like a almost like a parable or an allegory. Like this isn't the real world. This is just kind of the, I don't know, the nightmare of having to navigate Hollywood as an aging actress. And um for all of the warnings that I got about how brutal and how like gross the body horror was, I think the one thing that nobody truly braced me for was how gross it was going to be to watch Dennis Quaid eating a shrimp cocktail in close up. That was awful. Like that was truly disturbing to me. And it's such a great introduction to this idea of like just this absolute slob of a human being telling you that you're not viable anymore because you're not attractive enough because you're too old. Yeah, this movie it is not subtle. It's not meant to be subtle. And I love just the way at which it swings for the fences and is I think the other thing I wasn't prepared for is how like surreally like the surreal humor involved. That the whole end sequence where she kind of turns into like this big like monstrous King Kong kind of a thing, where she's just spewing blood at this crowd and everything's gone wrong, and you can't help but just like nervously laugh at just how over the top this goes. And it's just I appreciate that Courtney Fargeat doesn't pull punches with her movies. She is going to just she's going to dial it up to 11 and stay there for most of the movie.
Yeah, this was a swing for the fences, like unflinching movie. And more these days, I mean, this was always probably the case, but especially now, it's tough to get your vision out there. It's certainly tougher for women, for people of color. So when people have the opportunity, swing for the fences, make something that you care about, make something that stands out, make something that's controversial because some folks do like to play it safe, and those are the kind of things that get forgotten. Like I said when we were talking about Heretic, it's the things that are controversial. It's the things that cause people to flinch or cause people to talk about it. You're not going to get everybody. You're not going to get 100% of people out there to like your movie or like your book or like your music. So you might as well not worry about trying to please everyone and just do something that's you. And that's clearly this.
Yeah, this was so uncompromising. One of those movies where you're looking around in the theater like, wow, this is really happening, isn't it? And I was in a theater with like, I went by myself and I was with three other people that went by themselves. So we're all just drawn to this movie that we had heard about. Like, and it certainly did not disappoint because it did not pull any punches at all. And from the cinematography, which is really like in your face at times and super like where you're just like you mentioned like the cocktail shrimp or when like Dennis Quaid is on the phone at the urinal and you're just like watching like spittle fly from his lips and it's just so just in your face and immersive. And I feel like Revenge did that too really well. But then also like the music by Rafferty for this movie, where it has this almost like a futuristic sound to it, and like the commercial kind of club mix that they're doing for the Substance commercial. It's just there's so much about it. Like it really is its own world, but it's also a reflection, a heightened well, in some ways, unfortunately, not heightened reflection of our world. So it was it was one of those movies where I kept thinking they're not going to go there, are they? And then she did, and by the end of the movie, like you mentioned, there's this like splat stick humor where she's like trying to hide that she's literally falling apart until like a geyser just erupts of blood and it's like just projectile like vomiting all this blood back on the world that put her in this position and it's this total carnage and it's like wow that is quite the mic drop by the end of this movie.
Yeah, and shout out to Pierre Olivier Person who did the special effects for the film, and of course Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore because they get put through the ringer on this. This was not, I can't imagine in some cases this was maybe it was an easy movie to say yes to, but again, kudos to them for looking at this and being like, Yeah, I'm in, and I'm in for all the blood, guts, and gore that are gonna and makeup effects and time in the chair, and it's like I said, it's a work of art, and I think it operates on, like I said, on every level. You were talking about the theater experience. I'd called this out before, but I was in the packed theater for Terrifier. Nobody walked out. I was in the theater for The Substance, and I had three people walk out of it. So,
Oh, I
it's
can see
the
it.
yeah, the fact that it played in screens all over the country, all over the world, the fact that, Academy screeners are going out and people are watching this, like it's pretty cool. This is a big movie for horror. There have been a lot of movies that have been big for horror, but it's nice that it feels like we're getting more of those. Like Get Out, The Shape of Water. Like it feels like, these movies are continuing to get more and more recognition as as the art that they are.
And I haven't been hearing like the that shift away, like that fear of calling it horror either. Like I think as more of these horror movies are showing that
Yeah.
they can be, well-made quality movies and aren't just, the slasher assembly line, I think there's less and less hesitancy to just call them horror, which is, what it
Mhm.
is.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen a big shift over the last 10 years, especially, and it's been nice to see.
It's also interesting that it's telling a movie, like it's a movie from a very singular perspective of what it's like to be a woman in Hollywood and to be discarded, and like the kind of the internalized self-loathing that comes from that. But damn if it didn't connect with like some of the feelings I've been having about myself as I've been getting older. Like when you have that one scene where her, her idealized double, where kind of the Margaret Qualley version spends just a little too long, and then Demi Moore has like basically like her finger has turned decrepit, and she calls the line. It's like, hey, how do I reverse this? You can't. The best most you can do is stop it. You can't reverse it. If that isn't like an allegory for aging, and that kind of looking back, as she's like, especially when she's over the course of the movie, like by the end of it, like Margaret Qualley has been just so negligent with the Demi Moore side of the body, that she just looks like this old crone. And then she's looking back at the poster of what she did look like just a few months ago, and it's like, oh, I miss that now. I miss having that. And it's like I remember there have been literal times where I've been like, you're focused on your imperfections in your current state. And then like a few years later, you look back at what your pictures were and you're like, I looked great. And now I'm decrepit. Like it's always just like you can't there's just the conversation about, how we're not allowed to accept our bodies as they are, and how it's a million times worse for women, and 100 million times worse for women in the movie industry. It is just really struck a chord watching that.
That definitely, I guess, speaks to, like I said, the universal theme of it is that, there are, especially because social media, that a lot of people, doesn't matter what age you are, but if you're on social media, there's a lot of self-image, especially now, more self-image when you see people that have, photoshopped or now AI shopped images, and you may not know. And so, and that's definitely rough.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting to see like these two different ages, to like these essentially two generations of the same person, how they're having this constant battle, like with almost like with a memory of herself, and there's this tug and push and pull, and they can't directly confront each other, but they're linked together, and it's really fascinating. Like you said, it is this like mirror image thing that is very relatable, and I know it's also something like I've seen a lot of people online relate to the scene where Demi Moore is going to go out on a date, and then she keeps coming back and putting more and more makeup on because she's worried that she needs to have a little bit more, and before you know it, the whole night's over and her date's wondering what happened to her. And it's like these moments that the movie touches on, that as absurd as it gets in the last like final minutes where there's this like geyser of blood, like it's a very relatable and human movie and touches on so many human emotions that people are going through every day. And I think that's what's so amazing too about what she pulled off and the whole cast with the story of this, where it touches on so many things that as crazy as it gets, it's still like very grounded too.
And yeah, and I think Derek, that's a really great point. Like, for as over the top as the climax is, it ends on this such quiet, tragic note where like Demi Moore's face pulls itself on top of her own like Hollywood star, and just kind of like looks up at the like the last kind of like illusion of glitter as she just kind of passes away and just like melts into blood that is then just like swept up by a street cleaner the next day and just, forgotten about entirely and not even noticed. It's such a tragic movie, but just packaged as this, like if you the more grounded version of this movie would just be like this very bleak kind of like melodrama, and the fact that Coralie Fargeat decided to like take that and turn it in just this absolute over the top like farce of a body horror movie is just so gutsy.
I think it also speaks to like the futility of chasing fame. There are people out there that are kind of trying to chase a certain status, or or even if you think of the world's best actors today, people who have their star, at the what is it, TLC, TCL, at the Chinese theater today, and they changed the name. It's not Grauman's anymore. And but people walk over those stars all the time, and there's a huge percentage of people who walk past them have no idea who the people are on the stars, have no idea what they've done. And so, even if you are famous, you're just famous, most people, for a very short period of time.
Very fleeting. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's not the most feel good movie of the year, but it definitely it gets the it just like Heretic. I think it completely sets out to accomplish like the message and the goal of the movie, and it I think it even exceeds what it sets out to do. It's so uncompromisingly bold in its vision, and it definitely doubles down and never plays it safe. Because, like you said, there is probably a much safer version of this movie that could have been made, and it still would have been good. But like this, I mean, Corley decided to do this version of it, and it still is getting the recognition that it deserves, which is great because maybe 10 years ago that wouldn't have been the case, but it's definitely getting a lot of eyes on it, which I would definitely be curious to hear the reactions of people that maybe aren't necessarily like horror fans that watch this because of the awards recognition that it's getting, and then to see maybe it'll turn them on to other movies in the genre. Like it could be that it's an you wouldn't think of it as a gateway horror movie, but maybe it actually will be for some people because if you can survive the substance, you can survive a lot of movies
This is like
that
the
you
Walking
maybe didn't
Dead
think.
thing. Yeah, if people
Yeah,
can see the substance, they can see most horror movies for sure. And this is a great case, and there are definitely some people who are hitting themselves over not releasing this movie and letting movie take it. And this makes a great case for, and of course, like I said, a lot of people have argued this, but don't just fund the $200 million movies. I know saying don't fund them is not realistic, but don't just fund them. Instead, take, that 200 million, spread it out over 10 filmmakers, give them $20 million, find different voices, find people who make things that maybe make you uncomfortable and you may think is a bit of a gamble, because these are the movies that stand out. Going back to what I was saying, like playing it safe doesn't work. And so that gives us movies like these. I'm glad we have it.
Well, speaking of movies that, you give a smaller budget and get big returns off of, we're going to go to a movie that was made for less than $10 million, wound up grossing or pulling in 126 million at the box office. Longlegs by Osgood Perkins. Now, depending on when you're hearing this, you're probably already on to the next Osgood Perkins movie,
Yeah, like
Monkey, which is
long legs
already,
again.
yeah, yeah. And I won't make people sit through too much of this, but I do have a couple of things I wanted to discuss. Scott loved this movie, and honestly, I don't think I was going to see it until I heard Scott's review of it when we covered it. I honestly didn't
I'm
have
just,
interest in it until I heard Scott talking about it. I think it's kind of one of those things where. Uh, whenever I hear like Nicolas Cage doing a wacky over the top role, I'm like, they perfected that in Mandy and they've never quite gotten it right since. Like people have like tried to duplicate kind of the funneling of the manic energy of Nicolas Cage, and I think Mandy did it best, and I think it's kind of been diminishing returns since. That said, I think they did a pretty damn good job at like this is definitely like manic Nicolas Cage, but it's not a flavor that I think has been done before. I don't know that has he's ever done fully creepy before like this. Like Jonathan, Derek, is there anything you can point to where he's just been like this creepy?
I don't think so. I'm
I
sure something
mean,
will come up, but I mean, he's played vampires before. Obviously, he was Ghost Rider, but no, he's not played a creepy serial killer like this.
Maybe Face Off, maybe before the swap happened.
hints of that maybe. Speaking of the face, I think one of the other things that I was a little hesitant about going into this was it initially seemed like they were kind of doing some gender bending with Nicolas Cage's character, and that's been kind of a long time problematic trope where trans characters or characters who aren't maybe not officially trans but are like depicted that way are used for creepy effect. And I was a little worried that like it was going to be a full movie of that, but I was kind of not put at ease because the whole point is that you're not supposed to be at ease in this movie, but I did I appreciated that like Nicolas Cage's look wasn't necessarily supposed to be like feminine. It's he's wearing a mask and like he is like there's slight elements where like it kind of looks like he's wearing lipstick and things like that, but it's they never really give any kind of indication that he is trying to change his gender or trying to like pretend to be a different gender. He's a creep with kind of a weird face and long hair. And so yeah, I and the high voice just I think is just kind of an affectation more than anything else.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think it's something I don't know, it's hard to put your finger on what it's just creepy, like his portrayal that he's tapping into. There, it's almost like he's multiple things at once, like he's tapping into so many different things at once. It's like it's all like a mask in a way, it feels like to me. And he's this harbinger of this almost unfathomable evil. So it's kind of like he's this conduit. And to me, there's this supernatural element too that I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around
Well, yeah, he's really
with,
working with the devil. I mean,
right?
it's not like one of those things where like he thinks he's working with the devil. Like he talks to him regularly. They text. But no, they really do. He really is able to channel the devil, and he really is, able like he has powers, or at least the devil does through him.
I also think they did a good job at like using him judiciously in terms of like he's not in the movie too much. You
Hmm.
get flashes of him. They also
Yeah.
do that really effective. You only see him most of the time in like the periphery or he's like slightly out of focus.
Yeah.
And it really just kind of hits that otherworldly vibe that he's giving. And I think kind of his over the topness is a really good contrast with Micah Monroe's character, who is just kind of very, I don't know if stilted is the right word, but she's in some way kind of stunted. Like she's clearly just she has a hard time like being a person. And it makes sense and it's interesting as you kind of get more and more over the course of the movie, like the upbringing she had, her tied along legs, like there's a lot she's dealing with and kind of watching how that affects her psyche. I think she does a really good job. And, in any movie where you're sharing credits with Nicolas Cage, like you always kind of have to like, I always feel like that's an uphill battle, just in terms of like he's going to kind of like take up so much screen presence because they don't spend a lot of screen time together too. He is a great kind of like in the background villain while she has to do a lot of the heavy lifting for kind of like the narrative, and I think she does a really great job.
Obviously, there's been a lot of Silence of the Lambs comparisons with Longlegs, and I feel like while Micah Monroe, there's some similarities there to Jodie Foster's performance, and then you could say like Nicolas Cage, like his limited screen time kind of comparable to Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter only being in the movie for like 13 minutes or whatever it was. And so it's kind of interesting, but also I feel like it's so effective having him in it less, and they still got moments that they were able to market really well. And that kind of took a life of their own on like TikTok and social media where people were impersonating like the singing scene and things like that, where which are just so out there. There's this like menace about his character that I feel like it's a less is more approach. So I do like that they Osgood was very strategic about how he used him in the movie.
Yeah, and kudos to Neon for not ruining it all. And they did the same with the monkey. They're doing like William Castle style stuff in some cases with how they're handling some of this marketing. So it's been really cool to watch.
And yeah, the fact that in the trailer you don't know everything that happens, and like you don't see what's coming. You know, the fact that
Yeah.
this is a full-on satanic movie, you know, you get that, you kind of see the threads start to kind of come together as you realize he's a doll maker, and he is, you know, the way he is able to get these families to basically commit these ritualistic murder suicides. You know, he puts this doll in, and they don't fully explain it either, other than like it's satanic. You know, it's got like this phantasm-esque sphere in the doll's
Yeah.
head, that kind of puts out this energy and puts out these suggestions. I do think, if I have one quibble about this movie, it's the very end. Because if you are finding out, you know, throughout the course of this movie that kind of this person's MO is to basically do mind control with these dolls, and you go into a house and you see your boss has one of these dolls in his house and he's clearly already kind of acting weird, aren't you going to just immediately shoot that doll in the head? Like, if you know how these dolls work, like, why am I missing something there? As to like, I was very frustrated when I'm just like, shoot the doll, shoot the doll. Why are you not shooting the doll? Because eventually, after she kills her boss, because like, you know, he had killed his wife and he was about to kill his daughter, then she finally thinks to shoot the doll, and then she's out of bullets. Is the delay there? Or we like, is there some kind of demonic suggestion or like satanic suggestion that's keeping her from doing that? Or I don't know. I was
I
I was a
didn't,
little frustrated
and
there.
I have to think about this. I mean, you can see me, but listeners
Yeah.
can't. But I was thinking about it. My gears were going. I don't think it was very apparent to her that this was definitively satanic, just like us. So we're finding out about it at the same time, and she's kind of realizing what she's in the middle of. I think her brain goes to panic mode, and I don't think she knows how to get out of the situation she's in, and I don't think she's able to make the choice to take out that doll immediately because she doesn't know it's definitively causing this problem. Now,
And also,
granted, horror fans that are just ready to go, they'd be like,
Yeah.
just hit the doll. As you can see me just pick up the doll by the legs with my hand right now and hit it.
Yeah,
But
like,
yes,
is that us? Is that me metagaming where it's just like, it's the doll, kill
I
the doll?
I think a little bit. I think because I didn't expect it to be, for me, I was surprised that they went that route. I did not expect it to be actually like Satan. So I think there was an element of like they still figured, oh, hey, it's the mom, or hey, there's something going on, like what's happening here. So it felt natural to me.
and I don't know if was the doll preventing the gun from firing? Like, does it have this like telekinetic ability to manipulate people into not being able to destroy them? Like, that's kind of where I got a little frustrated too, is that, to me, I feel like there's so much ambiguity. Like, there's just so much going on in the last third, because I love the first two thirds, but it's like that last like 15 to 20 minutes where I just feel like it goes, there's just so many directions that it wants to go that I don't know if I wasn't completely satisfied with the explanation or the lack of explanation that was given, like as far as, oh, this is what it is. Like it just kind of felt like, I don't know, I just feel like it could have been more, or at least got or committed more to one of several different things that it's kind of weaving.
I liked it because this movie, and again, like like you have your opinion on it, so I'm not trying to switch you otherwise. But this is very intentionally a fever dream from the very start, it's meant to be once you have a nightmare and you wake up and you can remember maybe 75% of it, then 5 minutes later you can only remember pieces of it. There's things he does in terms of the cinematography, in terms of the edits, in terms of the camera placement that are meant to like disorient you and put you in the middle of like essentially this dream state, right? Where like, oh, I'm awake again, or like I'm in the dream world again. I'm watching these characters do this, and I'm switching to this, and I'm switching to that. So like it's meant to intentionally disorient. And I know in some cases they'd be like, well, that's a cop out. Like it just he just didn't have this. No, like it seems like there were specific choices made in the cinematography and the edits to not show you everything. I feel like maybe there is more on the cutting room floor, and that's very likely like the cast and like Osgood like has like an internal mythology for this, but we're just not getting it intentionally.
I do
Even though
appreciate
it's not satisfying.
I do appreciate contributing to that fever dream feel. The using T-Rex for like the entire soundtrack, with I think was a really good decision. Just kind of a way of like T-Rex is such a vibe, right? Like it's just such a like a very kind of like singular like psychedelic rock vibe. I think using that for the majority of the music in the movie, I think really, and especially using it for like the opening credits, is really good at setting the tone for what you're going to get.
Well, I think that really describes this movie well, the vibe, because it really is the thing that I love the most about it was the atmosphere, this sense of dread that you get that kind of builds up throughout the movie, like this sense of unease. And maybe it's that I just didn't want that to end, or I just wanted it to lead into something bigger or just something more definitive in the end because I do love like how controlled like they have this very controlled investigation going on and it just keeps getting more and more weird and it has like I love the interactions between Micah Monroe's character and then Blair Underwood as her boss and they're like going out for or he's having drinks and kind of talking about this and you get a sense of like this grounded approach that they're taking in the investigation how that conflicts with just how manic Longlegs is and how it some stuff really doesn't make sense. And so there is this kind of good tug and pull going on, tug of war going on throughout the story. But see, I really can't. I can't say anything. I can't pronounce names right, and I can't even get like simple analogies right. But I'm gonna blame it on Longlegs.
No, it's tug and pull. I don't know what you're talking about.
And our listeners can't see, but I like to talk with my hands, so I'm trying to like,
He's
You're
playing
tugging
you
and
tug of
know.
pulling.
war. He's playing tug of war. We have to see
It's a
this,
good thing
folks.
this isn't a Twitch stream because I'd be getting a video clip of this afterwards.
Yes, Monica would be clipping the hell out of this. Also, just a final quick note. I Kiernan Shipka, who was in another Osgood Perkins movie, Blackcoat's
Oh,
Daughter. I almost didn't recognize her as Carrie Ann, the only survivor from like kind of Longlegs like Rampage, not Rampage, but you know like his MO. But she's so good. She is like the way she talks is so creepily hypnotic, and the kind of like the kind of like southern like almost like Appalachian, like folksy way that she says a lot of things. She's just so good at like it's somehow both like really soothing and also like really intimidating at the same time.
And I don't remember if this is true or not. Maybe it's just legend, but I'm pretty positive I heard this was like a one take thing, or at least they used the first take. So like I know it was a quick thing for her coming in and out. This in an alternate universe, she would have been nominated for a best supporting actress because it just shows that somebody can just come in and just knock it out. But yeah, I thought she was great in that.
and also
Yeah,
very good in Sabrina, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina,
Yes.
yeah.
which makes it even more impressive that I didn't recognize her right away either. And I had seen her on that show and Riverdale because they crossed over.
I knew you'd get back to Riverdale. I knew where this was
We're
going.
back to
I
Riverdale.
knew where it was going.
Yeah. We just
I
we keep
restrained
living in the
myself for as long as I could.
so we had an opportunity to kind of give one last look back at 2024. We've been living in the past a little bit, just one last time. But I think we are ready to finally push forward. We're several months in at this point, but we're ready to push forward with 2025. We are going to be coming back with new episodes about new movies coming up. In the meantime, as always, we want to thank our listeners. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com to check out our latest episode. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review helps us out. You can find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach us anytime at contact@corpseclub.com. Yay for me not saying Comcast this time. Or you can get us on Twitter at Daily Dead News or at Corpse Club, and on Instagram and Facebook under Corpse Club.
Oh wait,
Thanks
let's
again.
promote some stuff. Hold on.
We got
You
stuff. We
should
got
be
stuff.
yeah, you should be, you know what? We're gonna change some of the script. You can find us on Blue Sky. Spend some time with us on Blue Sky. We're Daily Dead on Blue Sky because that's where I want to spend more time. So yeah, that's we have social media platforms everywhere. But that one, and we're sharing some more personal stuff on Instagram. But we're going to be at the Overlook Film Festival soon, and if you want to check out all the stuff we'll be doing there, we'll be posting it to Blue Sky because we want to build our audience there. There's lots of good folks there, so find us.
Yay, Blue Sky. Boo to Twitter. I refuse to actually say what it's now called because fuck that platform, fuck that guy. All right. Thanks again for listening, everybody. And until next time, stay scary.